For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for instant analysis of USC's 9th practice of its 2021 fall camp. The Trojans returned in full pads on Howard Jones Field after going in the Coliseum, having a full scrimmage on Saturday. And Shotgun, I thought it was interesting. You and I both noted during practice that this practice had a better feel to it than what we saw on Saturday. And Clay Helton after practice previewed that this week will be the most physical week for the Trojans in fall camp. They're going to go 4 straight days in full pads and have a scrimmage on Saturday back in the Coliseum. But Shotgun, first off, what was different about this practice than what you saw on Saturday?
I just think that there was more energy. There's been some consistency issues with the offense, but I thought that they moved the ball a little bit better. A lot of mixing and matching, a lot of different pieces, a lot of different personnel, but no one really had a complete rest day outside of Drake London. We didn't see him do too much again today, so a little bit concerned about the injury there, but I think he'll be back and healthy. But it just felt like it was more back and forth with the offense and the defense. There was some good pops given. There's also some good holes opened up from the offensive line, some nice completions. It was a little bit of back and forth more than it felt like. The defense dominated on Saturday, and the offense couldn't really do much outside of a couple of big plays down the sidelines. So I just felt like the offense got going a little bit better, and there was just better energy overall from the team.
Mm-hmm. And Clay Helton said they opted to skip the 7-on-7 portion of practice and go straight into team periods. What did you take away from that? Because essentially it was a recreation of Saturday's practice with the same amount of plays.
Yeah, now they didn't fully tackle to the ground in some of those team periods. There was one full team period where the first play of the team period was a 70-yard run by Vavae Malepeai. So seeing the offense get on track there and create a big play in the run game is really nice to see from the offense. But then instead of 7-on-7, instead of doing a lot of drill work later, the second half of practice, they went full team. Now, they didn't tackle to the ground, but it was full team, a lot of reps for guys and a lot of reps for the young guys. And that's one of the things Clay Helton said. He said, we've seen a lot of nice things from Miller Moss and Jackson Dart in the one-on-ones, the 7-on-7s, where they're not facing that pass rush. And he said it's a little bit different, and it's a lot different when you get the live action, the live bullets coming at you, with Drake Jackson coming off the edge, which we saw today, which is great to see as well. But he wanted to put them back in that situation. I feel like from what we heard from Clay Helton, it sounded like they were not very happy with the performance on Saturday either, and he felt like they needed to put the freshmen right back out there and get some good reps under him, and I thought both Jackson Dart and Miller Moss had some nice reps today as well.
Mm-hmm. And you have an interesting observation about the difference between the two quarterbacks. What is that?
Yeah, I think that both of those guys are processing a lot quicker now. I think Miller Moss is stepping up in the pocket really well, but I think that Miller Moss is doing a really good job of finding holes in the zone coverages, and whereas Jackson Dart's doing a really good job of identifying the one-on-one matchups and throwing a more accurate deep ball and being able to attack those one-on-one matchups a little bit better. So I think both of the guys are doing some different things right now, and it'll be interesting to see what the coaches are really looking for as the fall camp progresses to see who can win that backup job.
Mm-hmm. One thing we're keeping our eye on during this fall camp is who's going to be USC's second receiving option. We've seen a lot of options, but one thing that's missing is consistency. And Shotgun, at what point are you declaring that a little bit of an issue?
Not yet, because you got a lot of young guys, or a lot of new guys at least. Kyle Ford coming back from injury, Taj Washington transfer. You got some young guys in there, the Man Jacks, Mike Jack, all the Jack Jacks in there. But the one guy that has been consistent, there's been some ups and downs from kind of all of those guys. The one guy that's been consistent is John Jackson III, the veteran receiver that doesn't really get much run, as far as publicity and stuff. But he's been the guy that has been consistently catching the ball and finding his way open, especially in the zone coverages. He's done a really good job. So I wouldn't be surprised if he earns a little bit more playing time than maybe people were thinking coming into the season. And, Drake London's been the most consistent guy of anyone, but he hasn't been at the last 2 practices. So a lot of those other guys have gotten opportunities. Katie Nixon, another guy that's getting in there. But we just haven't seen the consistency from any of those new guys that you're looking for to be able to, label anyone as, oh, that guy's definitely stepped forward and he's taken over a job. We thought Taj Washington had done that. He hasn't done a great job catching the ball the last couple of days, so he's got to jump back in it. And that could be something that happens during camp where guys start to press a little bit, from learning the playbook and doing everything. So he's just got to reset and get back focused. Kyle Ford's had a couple nice days, had a nice catch today, long touchdown catch, nice little, push off a little bit. Didn't, right in front of the referee, no call, so that one's clean there. He had a touchdown in Saturday's scrimmage as well. So those two guys are probably the front runners of that group for the number 2 spot, but still need to see consistency out of them before anyone kind of is anointed as the number 2 guy behind Drake London.
Mm-hmm. Now, stop me if you've heard this one before. We saw more mixing and matching on USC's offensive line today in practice. Most notably, Cortland Ford returned to that left tackle spot. Jonah Monheim moved to right tackle with the first team. And Jalen McKenzie, who we saw with the first team in Saturday's scrimmage, was now at the second team. Shotgun, we know we would see more mixing and matching, but can you take away something from this? Because the one main takeaway we had was that Jonah Monheim was getting the majority of first team reps at left tackle. Do you note the fact that now he's at right during the first team?
I don't think you take too much away from it yet. Now, we're going to be watching it throughout the week, and if that's the group that we see the entire week and going into the scrimmage, then yes, that's definitely notable. However, there's been so much mixing and matching with different pieces on different units, second team, third string. All those teams have been mixing and matching a lot that I don't think we can take too much out of one practice. Monheim starting at left tackle 4 or 5 consecutive practices last week was definitely notable because that's been really the only consistent piece of the up for grab positions, it feels like. Now, with Jalen McKenzie moving down to the second string, let's see what happens the rest of the week before we decide to make a big deal about it. But the offensive line is another thing, consistency. The entire offense, from every position group, the biggest question mark right now and the biggest issue is consistency. The offensive line, like I said, first play of team, opens up a nice hole for Vi. He turns the corner on a zone run and takes it to the house for 70 yards. But you're also seeing some plays where there's guys in the backfield. The pass rush really had a good day today. Drake Jackson, Nick Figueroa had back-to-back sacks at one point. There were 5 or 6 sacks during the period. So the offensive line has to be more consistent pass blocking as well.
But will that consistency come once USC finds a more their 5 starters? I mean, how much does the mixing and matching influence that chemistry?
I think that would definitely help, and I think that's something they're looking for. And I like the fact that they're doing a ton of mixing and matching now rather than waiting later in camp and trying to see if, okay, this is the group and then not feeling it out. Let's see what we have. Let's see this guy here. Let's see this guy here. And tomorrow should get Casey Collier back in the mix. Clay Helton said that he's probably going to be returning tomorrow. He's been home in Texas for a personal reason. So getting him back and adding another body there, I think that'll be helpful for him as well. We'll see if he has a chance to even jump into that mix. Where he'll be when he comes back. Is he back with a left tackle with the second team, or is he moving around a little bit? Because he's one of the guys that hadn't moved around prior to his absence. So that's one we'll keep an eye on as well.
Mm-hmm. Got to see a new drill today, and up close and personal. We got to see the offensive line taking on the safeties. The safeties would blitz the tackles, and we even saw some guys who played inside had that tackle rep. So what did you take away from that one-on-one matchup?
A guy that really stood out to me is the Auburn transfer safety, Thompson Jr. We've seen him make a bunch of big pops in the run game, and seeing him come off the edge, he looks like he could be a weapon as a pass blitzer as well, run blitzer. Just throwing him into the mix because he has that big 6'2" frame, 220, 230 pounds. So he's a guy that I don't know if he's the guy that you necessarily want at the back end as your cover guy right now, but he is showing that at least in different packages, he could be a guy that could attack the quarterback, and when you throw in some of those third and long situations, you have him coming off the edge with some of those weapons they have up front, could be really scary for an offense. So he's a guy that stood out to me. Jalen Smith, I thought, had a really nice day as well, and Greg Johnson. And Greg Johnson's been a guy who's been really good on the blitz in his career as well. Hasn't done it much, but when he has been called on, he's done a good job getting in the backfield. And then on the offensive side, I thought Cortland Ford looked really good in the drill. And this is more his skill set, is to be able to move his feet, use his quickness, and I thought he did really well as that. Whereas Andrew Voorhees, a little like his skill set, probably more suited for inside play just because he's more of a mauler going forward rather than a guy that's going to get out in space against some of those quick guys like Jalen Smith, who he does have some, if he gets his hands on him, Jalen Smith's in trouble, but using that quickness to try to get around the edge, I thought that Cortland Ford probably looked the best, and then Liam Jimmons also looked pretty good in the drill as well. So, seeing some different things, that's a different skill set from the offensive lineman, but one that comes up in games. When you have that edge rusher coming off on a blitz, there's not always a tight end or a running back there to pick up the guy coming off the edge, so sometimes it's up to that tackle. So it was interesting to see those guys today.
Mm-hmm. As we mentioned earlier, we got to talk to Clay Helton today, and that meant we got a lot of personnel updates, injuries, and just where are players, because sometimes we can't see them. And Chuck, and we got some news on 2 season-ending injuries. Adonis Ote, the cornerback, had a broken bone in his wrist. He had surgery. Clay Helton said it's likely that he will be out for the season. And then Britton Allen, who we noted didn't sound great last week, and what we saw from him when he had a cane on Saturday's scrimmage, he has a torn ACL, and he will undergo season-ending surgery. So unfortunately, unfortunately, he will be out for the 2021 season. Then I asked Clay Helton about Malcolm Epps, the tight end. He has turf toe. We've noted turf toe is hard to come back from, and it didn't look like Epps was progressing. And today he came out not dressed in uniform, or he was in uniform, but he wasn't in pads, and he had a boot on his foot for the first time. And Helton said that that's about 3 to 4 weeks out. He said that would put the timeline around USC's first start, but he said he wasn't exactly sure if Epps would be able to get playing time at that point. But Shotgun, I know you were studiously taking notes during the presser, and so you had the full list of injury updates.
Well, first let's start with those guys. Unfortunate for the guys that are going to be out for the season, but those two position groups, both the DBs for the 2 season-ending injuries and the tight ends group, really deep. So the fortunate thing for USC is that it didn't hit a position where they're really thin at right now. But, we'll see how long it takes Malcolm Epps to get back. If he can get in the mix when he comes back, how quickly it takes him, to catch up, because he's a guy coming in a new offense, and we haven't really been able to determine if he can really pass block, if he can if he can run block at the tight end position, and that's what we haven't seen because he's missed those full pad practices. So he's a guy we're hoping that we'll get back sooner than later so we can see exactly what he has there. But some positive news on injury notes. Gary Bryant Jr. is progressing. I think he'll be back by the end of the week. Clay Helton didn't mention a specific timeline there. Keontae Ingram, he expects back this week, and Darwin Barlow, the other running back that's been out, could also be back this week, at least by next week. He says a week away and maybe back this week. So good to see that those guys are going to get healthy and get back. Corey Foreman did not practice today as far as in the team periods. He sat out, and basically he didn't sit out. He stood with Vic Soto, and then when Drake Jackson wasn't in, he stood with Drake Jackson as well. So constantly learning there, but he's been dealing with a groin strain. We did hear him kind of mention an injury last week quietly, but he played through the scrimmage and was really good in the scrimmage. Yeah. So I think they kind of just backed him down and said, we see what you can do. Let's back you down a day. Let's kind of get that healthy, and then try to get him back later for the scrimmage this Saturday as well. A couple other injuries, got to look at the notes here because there's so many of them. Casey Collier, as we mentioned, is out for personal reasons but should be back. ITS, Isaac Taylor Stewart, banged knees last week, and it's the knee that he had surgery on, so they're taking it slow. He has a bone bruise there. Make sure he's healthy, especially with it being a knee that he's already had surgery on. Chris Steele, cornerback, was not at practice today. Health and safety reasons, Clay Helton said. Not necessarily that he's in protocol or anything, but it said that he woke up and wasn't feeling well, so he's being checked on there. Jamar Sakona still is not returned. He's in the health and safety protocols as well for COVID. Let's see if we got any more here.
I just want to say, too, he bragged before the start that he didn't even need notes. It's hard, Shotgun.
Whoa, I didn't say that. I was joking that I wouldn't need notes because I knew there was a lot of them here. But the other one was Drake London. He's been out didn't practice much on Saturday, didn't do anything today. So we'll see where exactly he is. Throughout this week. I think they're just giving him a little bit of rest because he's taken some big hits, throughout the fall camp already, and you don't want that weapon to be too banged up going into the season. So make sure he's healthy, and you got to find out, extra reps for those other wide receivers to see who is that number 2, who is that number 3 guy as well.
Mm-hmm. And we did see the return of Kobe Pepe and Colin Mobley. Those 2 guys were limited last week. How much did they go in practice, though?
Pepe was in the middle of the mix, and Mobley got some third-team reps as well. He's coming back, and he's going to be a guy that's a little bit down the depth chart, but could potentially add some depth there for that defensive line. Getting Pepe back is big. Stanley Taofu had a sack today. He continues to make the most of his opportunities. So the nose tackle position will be interesting when Jamar Sakona comes back, because I think he was probably my front runner, last week before he had to, miss practice. So we'll see where he is in the mix and if he can get back up to that first team reps when he comes back.
Mm-hmm. Well, Shotgun, it sounds like this week will be a big evaluation week for USC's 2 deep. Any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Yeah, looking at my notes, one of the things that Clay Helton did say about this week, besides that it's going to be the most physical, is that there's going to be a lot of roles defined this week. So by the second scrimmage, I think they, after Saturday, when they watch the tape, I think that's when they're going to define, okay, what does our 2 deep really look like? And maybe there'll be a couple position battles still going. The offensive tackle one, it sounds like, will be one that is still going there. But I think that they really want to settle on some of those others so they can get that chemistry, get that camaraderie of a first-team offense and a first-team defense kind of down.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for USC's 9th practice of fall camp. For Shotgun Spratling, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.